have a very special guest tonight. I am very excited he's joining us, the one and only, the Taskmaster himself, Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's great to be on your show finally.
Oh,
You know,
I don't know where to start. I mean, unless you have like 9 days set aside for this show, I don't think we're going to scratch the surface of everything you've done in wrestling, Kevin.
well, we can try. Huh?
Let's talk about being a booker. I've always been fascinated by being a booker. I think like a trait of being a booker, like yourself, or like I've spent time with Jim Cornette. You have a knack to make everything you say sound interesting. Like I think that's a big trait of a booker. What do you think? What makes for a good booker from Kevin Sullivan's point of view?
I think one of the things that make a good booker is staying up with current affairs. Don't fall into the past. You know, stay up to current affairs. And, you know, I think that you mentioned Jimmy Cornette. Jimmy is a friend of mine, and I think the world of Jimmy. And Jimmy has this way of looking at talent and knowing how to place them. I think that's one of those things that people learn from other guys that are bookers or agents or whatever you want to call them. And they pick up on it, where some of the guys really aren't interested in picking it up. You got to have an interest in it. And I mean, they're the guys that I was lucky. I came from I'm not that smart, but I can remember stuff. So I was around a lot of smart guys, from Eddie Graham to J.J. Dillon to Dusty Rhodes to Bill Watts to Vince Sr., a guy you probably never heard about, and Roddy Piper, and I think he's one of the top two smartest guys of all times. Roddy and I used to talk, when God bless Roddy, when he was alive, was Leo Garibaldi. You ever hear the name?
I have.
Yeah, he was a huge star in the 50s. He was 16 years old. He was a matinee idol, got injured, and he was actually hired by the NWA at one time to go around and be like a special referee and report on the territories. And he was super, super smart. And Roddy used to say, nobody knows him, and he's one of the smartest guys in the business because he stopped early, stopped wrestling early, and stopped being in the office early. But, so I think that guys like Jimmy were attracted to guys like, we'll say, Leo Garibaldi or Terry Funk or Bill Watts.
Got it. Now, let me ask you this. How do you book for an entire company? Someone's got to win. Someone's got to lose. Like, what's your mindset when you go in there and you're telling someone, a hothead, they're about to lose the world title? Like, how do you handle 30, 40, 50 guys?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. Jim Barnett one time gave me the best compliment of all times, I think. He said to me, Kevin, you mind if I come in and watch how you give finishes? So I said, no, I love Jim. And when guys come in, like you said, you got two guys coming in. One of them's going to love you at the end of the conversation. One's going to hate you. So I used to say to them, we'll say Crowbar and you. Crowbar, I'd like you to do Pat a favor. Puts me out of it, right out of the middle. Now it's between you two, right? So if I alleviate, and I try to show a favor, it got to be repaid, you know what I mean? And I think I learned to book by Eddie, but I also, Vince Sr., one time, I'll make the story short. You know where they did the original Rocky in Philly, the arena?
Yeah.
We used to do TV there. And if Vince's and his cronies left, I got up, I looked at his book, and he had a year booked. And it was fascinating. And that's before guys were on contracts, guys were in and out, right? He had the main event booked. It was how many times, and you looked at the big shows, right? New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, Providence, Boston. You look at the big shows, it was Bruno's going to wrestle Stan Hansen 3 times, but he's only going to wrestle Brody twice and Bull Ramos once. And then the tag match he had booked right under it. And then he had the guy that was working his way up to Bruno on the third from the top. Then he have, maybe a guy flying in from LA or a guy that wants to be exposed. And then like on the second or third match, where, he was using local guys, he'd have a heel that was squashing guys. So he caught me reading this book and he said, "You want to learn?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Is that this?" I said, so I started asking questions. And this is what I found fascinating. He said, "Yeah, you got to stay ahead of the game or you could stop playing catch up." He said, "Most of this is going to be the same at the end of the year, but it should pan out the way it should." He said, so I asked him, I said, "Why do you put a guy on the third match in the Garden where you're flying him in a heel and giving him a squash match for a minute or 2 minutes?" He said, "Because you see the third match from the top where I have that heel getting ready for Bruno? What if he doesn't like a payoff? What if he gets hurt? What if he just flakes off? I got this guy that's been squashing everybody. I can slip him into that position." So to me, to have a year booked, he didn't have the TVs that they have now. It wasn't a TV show back then, even Eddie. It was the TV drove the house shows, but it was a house show driven business. But I believe you have to, to me, it's like writing a book or writing a movie. You got to know the end of the story. And if you're trying to catch up week by week, you get behind the 8 ball and you start to panic. And I think that's what we saw now that you see WWF's getting tighter, the show's getting tighter. I think you see that because back when it was all scripted and they were starting stories and dropping them completely, you know what I mean? And oh, well, we'll restart something. No, if you don't if something doesn't work the first week, give it a few weeks. It may turn the corner, but if it doesn't, you better find yourself a way to get out of that angle and get something out of it, not just drop it because you're invested time and TV time, which is very expensive.
Let me ask you this: you're a big baseball fan, as you know. Nobody bats 1,000, including bookers.
Right.
Give me an idea. Give me something that you booked, and when it happened, you said, "Man, I wish I have a do-over for that one." You wish you could take it back. What was something you wish you didn't book? Anything come to mind? There's got to be something.
Well, I did make a huge, huge mistake, but I rectified it. Goldberg. I beat him the first time ever on TV. People don't remember. He had red tights, red boots, Falcon jacket. He had bald head, but had hair. And Steve McMichaels beat him on a countout.
Oh, so you're not talking about you beat him with Kevin Nash later in his run. You're talking right off the bat.
Right on the first time ever on TV.
Wow.
Wow, I made a mistake here. So I pulled him off of TV, made him Mike Tyson, the black boots, no socks. Yeah, but, it's like you said, nobody bats 1,000. And you can come up with a great idea, but it's a talent-driven business. If the talent can get it over, you got a good chance looking smart because, as you know, Mike, it's a charisma business. Most guys either have it or don't. Most guys, when they get to like you did in the major leagues, there isn't much that separates us except that thing that you can't put your finger on. Like the Rock, right? Do you remember when they were booing him out of the building?
Yeah.
Did anybody think what we see today was going to be that?
No.
So, I mean, it was him believing in himself or taking the chance. You know, in Austin, the same way. I mean, guys that have drawn Dusty Rhodes. Here's something. I wrestled Dusty in a single, a tag, a man, me being on the floor, him wrestling Mark or something. Almost every night for 3 years. Never once did I ever hear a fan yell out Dusty or Fat. He just had that special quality. So, yeah, I think it's that you can write the greatest story in the world, but if you don't have the guys to present it right, it's not going to be get over like it should. But on the other hand, if the guys are very, very good, you can write a mediocre story and then pick it up and make it better.
Talk to me about Florida. You were there for what?
Yeah.
5 years? 6 years?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I was there. I came in 82, left for the first Starcade for a while, came back, left in 84 for 6 months and came back to 85. So I was in and out quite a bit. Yeah.
Was there anyone more over than Dusty Rhodes in Florida?
No. No, it was amazing. You know, my guys and I always say, you know, it was sold out. They hang them from the rafters. The guys were better workers, all that bullshit. But Dusty did have something special. I mean, the people absolutely loved him. And people, you know, I've heard people say, well, Dusty didn't do jobs. Dusty did jobs, but he did it at the right time. Like when I came back and I did the deal with the ink in the sister's face, and I wasn't even in the territory, and Dusty went on strike. That was his idea. He went on strike until they unsuspended me. We came back in Lakeland, and this was one of the few times I can remember there's no bullshit. They were stopping people on the exit saying, show us your tickets or that you live in this your license. Well, if any babyface should have went over that night, you know, after he came in and did a job in the middle of the ring, we were off and running. So, but they cried with them. They laughed with them. He was one of them. Amazing personality.
Tell me about being the cult leader. I mean, where did that come from? What inspired you to start doing that gimmick?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't start the gimmick coming in with a robe and the face paint and all that. I started out as a misunderstood babyface. I came back to Florida. I had booked for Mulligan in Knoxville. I was a heel. Him and Barry and Kendall were baby faces. And the dressing room was split. The Wyndhams, meaning the three of them, Magnum TA and Steve Kern, said, don't trust them, to Mike Graham, I think Mike Rotunda, a couple other baby faces. So the dressing room was split. So I just worked like a baby face until I wrestled Barry on TV for the title and did a real simple finish. He went to leg dive me. We wrestled 56 minutes. At the 15-minute mark, I went to leg dive him. He stepped the other way. I fell on the floor. He held the ropes up. I came in. At 56, he went to do it to me. I held the ropes up as he came in. I kicked him in the face, beat him. Then I hit Mike Graham with the belt. But every week, I started to go down a rabbit hole. But you got to remember, MTV's brand new. Billy Idol, White Wedding, Thriller. The horror genre is on, you know, Predator, all the other ones. The culture was changing very quick. Plus, I'm in Florida, you know what I mean? The illicit drug trade in Florida, you know. So I fell into reading all about that. And then I had just come back from spending a lot of time in Asia, like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong. And I used to go out and go on, I didn't like to stay in my hotel room, so I would go out and visit stuff. So I'd go out to the cave temples and stuff like this and read about it. So I put that in. So maybe someone would say, what's this guy talking about? Like the beetle nut. What the hell is that? And then there was no Googling, but maybe they looked in the dictionary, saw what a beetle nut was and say, oh, it's a psychedelic nut that they chew in India and spit. And he would say, well, oh, I see what he's talking about. I was trying to give subliminal messages off.
Tell me about working with superstar Billy Graham.
I mean, I was lucky. Every baby face I worked with was much bigger than me. I had Blackjack Mulligan. I had Dusty. I had Andre. I had superstar Billy Graham. And we did that great angle where I threw the chair with Humperdinck. We hung him. And then he did something that was way ahead of its time. Rather than doing an interview, he did it in still pictures where he went to the desert to purge himself and he voiced over it. And I mean, I was off and running with Billy too, because he had never been, that I know of, a baby face, maybe years before that, but there was never a baby face. And he was a big baby face in Florida. So we were lucky.
Did you like working with Billy?
Oh, I loved it. Loved it. It was a night off. Yeah. And his interviews were so great. He could talk about building.
Talking about the Varsity Club, that's one of my low-key guilty pleasures. I love that era of NWA. I love that group. I mean, Steiner was just such a young raw stud at the time. You had yourself, Rotundo, Dr. Death. Tell me about them.
They don't get enough credit. I wish it had lasted longer. It was, it was one of those things. What's wrong with this picture? I mean, we had Spivey too, you know what I mean? We had Rotunda, Rick, Dr. Death, Spivey, and then me. It's like, what's wrong with this picture? But that was Dusty's idea. When I asked him why he put me with them, if you probably won't remember this, but they were having all kinds of scandals at colleges at that time. Frat guys, under the table money, the point shaving, the point shaving of basketball, the drug use, all that. And he just dropped me in there with them. But they were phenomenal. They were phenomenal. And I just was lucky enough to be in the position to be with them. They were terrific.
What was it like helping groom a young Rick Steiner? Did you know you wanted to be such a big star?
Yeah, I knew it when he started to turn babyface. The people were turning him babyface. And he was just working like a heel. And I went to Dusty. I said, the only time I've ever seen this before, the people are actually forcing it, were with you, Dusty. I was there when Dusty turned babyfaces. And Dusty said, okay. And I said, I don't think we can keep this guy babyface another month. And I was right. About 2.5 weeks later, Dusty said, we got to do something on TV this week and turn him. He was great. I really enjoyed being with Rick.
You had another underrated group, the Sullivan Slaughterhouse. I mean, the talent you had in that group. Buzz Sawyer, Cactus Jack, Bam Bam Bigelow. Got any good Buzz Sawyer stories?
Yeah, Buzz. I mean, if you go to YouTube, there's one that did you ever see when Buzz did that frog splash they used to do off the top rope where he broke his wrist?
Yeah, you guys. It was you guys and Dynamic Dudes,
Yeah,
right?
he didn't even half-ass sell it. I mean, Buzz was brutal to those guys. I mean, brutal. And he wasn't just, people say, well, he must have been a bully. He wasn't a bully. He did it to everybody. Iron, he would do it to everybody. Iron kicked his teeth out, you know. I mean, Buzz was Buzz, you know what I mean? And a great performer.
Great bumper.
Yeah.
What about Mick Foley at the time? Any good stories of Mick?
Oh, I knew Mick was going to be, he was so different. You know what I mean? He was so different, didn't fit the mold of the guys in that era, you know, had that great view, take those ridiculous hard bumps. I mean, I knew he was going to be very, very big. Not as big as he became, you know,
Right.
but he was great.
You worked for ECW for a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell me about your interactions with Paul Heyman?
I started Paul in the business.
Really?
Yeah, he came down to Florida. He had a guy that was going to be a wrestler. Paul didn't get paid for, I don't think, 2 weeks. I put him, the guy's name was Tombstone. I put him against Scott Hall. I'd have Scott drill Paul every night. And then I couldn't chase him away, so we broke him in the business. Paul, I just saw an interview of him the other week, and that voice, he's an orator. He tries to be King Curtis. I mean, he can rally the troops, that's for sure, in the dressing room, can he? Yeah. Yeah. Very, very talented.
You've told me in person the story of Hulk Hogan the night before he turned heel that you were with him. Can you tell that story? That's such a fascinating story.
Yeah, well, I knew he had to turn heel, but everybody on his payroll nobody likes change. So when I finally convinced him into turning heel, I hear that all these guys are going to him and second guessing him. Well, we did it in Daytona. I was living in Daytona, about a mile and a half from the building at the most. I made him and his agent stay at my house. I put Hulk in a bedroom. I had another bedroom available, but I didn't let the agent go in the bedroom. I made him stay up on the couch. And I didn't go down the building with Hulk with his limo until the first match was on. I knew, you know, I've heard people say, well, might have been Sting. No, it wasn't. How could you have an invasion with a homegrown star, Sting? It wouldn't have made sense. It had to be Hogan. If it had to be, and I had no thought of it, but if it had to be anybody, might have gotten away with Randy because of the WWE factor, but no, it had to be Hulk.
Yeah. What was it like booking for Hogan? You always hear the creative control line. Did you have any issues with Hogan?
Well, if you're going in and know that the general isn't the general, that there's a 5-star general ahead of you, you're going to be kind of stupid to try to go against it. You can lay out your idea, but in the end of it was, think about this. We're all on Turner contracts, meaning TBS contracts, except Hogan. He's on one personal service to Ted Turner. So if you don't figure that he's got the ace card always, you're just wasting your time.
Talk to me about working with Brian Pillman.
The business lost a wonderful performer, you know, with Brian, but they really lost one of the super brains. Brian Pillman wanted to, when the Bengals won the Super Bowl with Ickey Woods back then and the guys, Brian Pillman was trying to get a sideline pass because he had played with the Bengals. He was going to run during the game when the ball was down the other side of the field and chain himself to the goal post naked.
Wow.
It would have made international news that would put him away for a while. But when he came out of there, everybody would have believed he was completely crazy.
How did you like working with Eric Bischoff?
Oh, I've said this before. I hear a lot of people knock Eric. You know, Eric had something going from that we wouldn't have going for ourselves because we've been so entrenched in the business. You know, the brain patterns on our head are going one way. Eric was new to the business, so he could think out of the box. He was a very, very good businessman. Very good businessman. A lot of guys retired very wealthy because of him. I can't knock him at all.
Were you in WCW when it closed? Were you there till the end?
No, I had just signed the 3-year extension, and the head of the North Tower sent me home. So I had 35 months they had to pay me for. So
Wow.
yeah, I was gone. I was gone about a month and a half before it folded.
And you sat home for 3 years and got a paycheck.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you have to work with Vince Russo at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, we all have different philosophies. I mean, a lot of people believe in his stuff. Maybe not my cup of tea, but my stuff wouldn't be his cup of tea. So, I mean, it's good to have a change up every once in a while, I think, you know, but I see things differently. He sees things differently. We all see things differently.
Is there anybody that when you were booking in WCW at the height of the Monday Night Wars that you said, man, I wish we can get this guy, and you had some ideas for? Or is there anybody that left that you said, man, I wish we didn't lose those guys?
Yeah. You know, Brian Adams. Not
Yeah.
Brian.
Brian Clark. Clark.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Brother, we missed the boat on him. I mean, he was a big guy. He looked great, and he could work. We missed the boat on him. It was so heavy talent on the heel side and you had so much TV to do. Maybe that was our mistakes.
Anyway, we can do a little word association. I'll just throw out some names. You
Yeah,
can just tell me a
sure.
word. Yeah, you can go on. You can go on for 10 minutes. It's fine for me. Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, one of the greatest of all times, brilliant mind, great performer. On the Mount Rushmore.
Sting.
The longevity he's had is unbelievable. He's still out there doing it. Kudos to him.
Luger.
I knew Lex when he first started. I was in the company, Florida, when they broke him in. I think people now are going back and watching his old matches and now reappreciating him, and he deserves it. Great performer.
I'm glad you said that. When I was a kid, I loved Lex Luger. Like I paid to see Lex Luger.
Yeah, I mean, Hogan put him over for the belt. He didn't do that to many people, right?
Yeah. Kevin Nash.
One of the Renaissance guys in the business. You can talk art, you can talk wine, you can talk museums, you can talk sports, you can talk politics, you can talk religion, you can talk philosophy, and he draws money. He's 7 feet tall, and when he was jacked, to me, he was one of the best specimens in the history of the business.
Goldberg.
a phenomenon. They're not going to catch that lightning in the bottle again too soon. Anyway,
Vince Senior.
one of the nicest human beings, and was very, very smart. I don't think he gets the credit for being as smart as he was.
Eddie Graham.
Eddie and Vince were very, very close. There was a period in my life where I was the surrogate son when him and Michael had a falling out. I would go to the office to get a ride with Eddie to a town, or he'd fly me, or I'd go fishing with them in the afternoon. And invariably, they'd be talking to one another about business on the phone. Eddie and Senior.
Scott Hall.
If I was going to make a movie of Tarzan, it would have been Scott. I would have put him. I mean, he was terrific and a terrific performer.
He was just cool. You know, like Scott Hall, you talk about like Dusty Rhodes has something. Scott was just, he was just cool. He could just walk the ring and you're like, that, I want to be that guy. Right?
Yeah, everybody did. Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk to you about is what about the current situation with Vince McMahon? I don't know, like what is your history with Vince Jr.? Did you ever have a relationship with him, spend time with him?
Yeah, I had a relationship when I was up there as a with Senior. What is my take on this? I mean, I don't know if a guy has been there, how long has been there, 48 years or whatever it is, right? From the first WrestleMania. Is it really stepped back completely? I'm not sure. You know, and he took wrestling out of the dark ages. It's been exposed, and we thought it would die when it was exposed. It's doing better now. It's in Sports Illustrated. I mean, you can't get away from it. The other night I turned on TV, and there was the WWE famous feuds. And I mean, you can't get away from it. The Rock is the #1 movie star of all times. Batista, Cena. I mean, so obviously he saw something that none of us saw.
You still watch the current product now?
I hadn't in a while, but now because of the so-called change, I've watched it and I like what they're doing. And I do watch AEW because it was different. And I think the business is in good hands with both of them. And hopefully, you know, it transcends it for a few more years.
One name I forgot to ask you, I want your take on Terry Funk.
Terry Funk?
Yeah.
When I grow up, I want to be just like Terry Funk. The greatest of all times. The greatest of all times.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kevin, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bella. Let's do it again sometime.
I can't thank you enough. This is huge for me.
You don't have to.
Thank
Thank you, my man.
We'll
Let's do it
see you
again.
soon. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Kevin, thank you.
You're welcome, my friend. Bye-bye.